Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to Respawning with Purpose. As you've probably seen in the description, this is all about rebooting your kind of brand and to put you in the best place for your career opportunities. So we've got a packed agenda. We're going to talk about what the respawn point is, the risks of leveling down, server disconnect, inventory check, making sure you choose the right skill tree, powering up with networking and glitches to avoid and some end game goals. So, but before we get into that, quick intro from me. I'm Joe. I'm the Talent Acquisition Director at Product Madness. I've been in HR and recruitment for over 12 years, and I've helped mentor hundreds of people in their careers within the game industry. And I'm a massive gamer. So I absolutely love the game industry, love playing games, and I'm constantly on with the latest kind of games, just playing Starfield at the moment, if anyone's interested. Um, there's a lot of information to cover today. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn, and if you don't get a chance to ask your questions in the Q&A in the chat, you can always connect with me, and I'm more than happy to go more into detail with these kind of topics. So, first one, what is the respawn point? Well, if you play a lot of computer games like me, you know that when you get killed in a game, you have to stop, respawn, and start again. So it's similar when you're unsuccessful or you need to do something different to improve your kind of career. So it's all about taking that time to think, okay, what is my strategy to get to that next level, to get to that job? And what is personal branding in the gaming world, right? So how are you adapting? How are you playing your game to get you to that opportunity? And when you're loading your new character, so some games like Diablo, you might do a different class, you might start a different character. But remember that reinvention and trying something new is not game over. It's not the end. So always think about doing something different. And starting over can be an upgrade. Sometimes when you play some games, you'll be playing the same class or using the same techniques or the same weapons, and actually you just feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again. Sometimes you have to start again with a new kind of loadout and a new kind of thing to really, really build up and upgrade to the next kind of level. So the respawn point, just to summarize, is all around you've got to that point, you're dead in the game, you think, how am I going to get better? How am I going to change my tactics to get to the next level or to reach the flag or to hit that goal? And it's the same when you are looking at your next kind of career. You've got to think and look at yourself and go, what is my personal branding? What do I need to do to change that tactics? And we're going to talk about a few kind of ways of doing that. One of the things you've got to be careful of is leveling down. Now, when you are respawning and you're starting again, sometimes you feel like an NPC, right? You're just going about it, doing the same thing. It's all boring. It's kind of like you're going through the same routine. So you've got to take yourself away and think, I'm actually the main character in my story. I'm not the NPC. I'm not playing someone else's game. I am the main character here. You've also got to be aware around these kind of negative things around. Sometimes it feels like you're not really syncing with the game industry. You don't really fit. And the analogy I use here is one that drives me insane. Is whenever I get a new gaming headset or I've got an old gaming headset with a new console, they never pair up right like the old ones did, and it's so frustrating. You have to go press another button. Sometimes it feels like that, and also you kind of feel like you're stuck in an earlier version of the game, right, where everyone else is doing something new or learning something different, right? All these kind of feelings, all these feelings about leveling down is completely normal when you move in your career. The gaming industry is a really fast-paced, ever-evolving kind of industry. So you need to adapt and change and get used to that kind of change because, and everyone has that imposter syndrome when they feel like they're going through these changes for new careers or upgrading their kind of career they've got at the moment. So you've just got to be aware of those, understand those, and that's how you can really, really kind of take that kind of forward. Because once you realize that you're acting like an NPC or you're not connected or you feel like you're doing an older version of a game, then you can do something about it. And that's what really leveling down is all about. You've got to recognize the signs. So what's next? So sometimes there's a server disconnect, right? And you kind of think, okay, I've leveled down and I'm MCC, I'm out of that kind of remit. What can I do to really do that? What can I do to get myself connected back to the server? Well, new patches, right? So there's always, like I said, things going off in the gaming industry. There's always kind of things happening. If I look at VR, AR, all those different things have happened. So you've got to understand what's going on in your industry and look at those industry trends. So new patches, industry trends, what's happening in the gaming industry, what's happening not just in AAA, what's happening in the kind of smaller mobile game studios. Get really understand it. And once you start to understand what that's going to happen, what's happening, you can then start to kind of predict, well, what's the next kind of trend? What can I get involved in? And where do my passions kind of lie? Game lags absolutely does matter in for online gaming, but there's always a mismatch between aspirations and opportunities. So when you feel like you're disconnected, sometimes your aspirations and don't live up to the opportunities. But remember, sometimes it's a stepping stone. You've got to kind of think, okay, I want to be a senior game designer, but I've got to go in as a junior game designer. I've got to understand how game design works. So you've got to look at the other things. So be realistic with your aspirations and opportunities. A really good example is that Zelda Breath of the Wild, you can go and fight Ganondorf right off the off. But most people need to go and build up all their inventory, all their armor, all their health to go and do it. Some people can go and do it straight away and speed run it and out there. But the way you really play the game is you've got to play the game and build up everything there. It's the same when you look at your aspirations. You can still go and beat Ganondorf, but you've got to go and take the opportunities to kind of get more hearts, more swords, get the Master Sword, all that sort of stuff. So you need to kind of use that as an analogy and take it forward. Side quests. I had a really good conversation about this with one of my art designers in Product Madness. Side quests are the best things you can do, right? So look at projects, look at little tasks you can do, because these are becoming main missions. And I'm old enough to remember that web design was just a kind of hobby back in the day before internet came out. Yeah, I know I'm not old enough. I don't look old enough, but I definitely remember websites coming in. And all the people that went and learned web design, HTML and CSS, did it as a hobby, right? They were back-end coders, and they just did it just to learn and make things pretty, and they did it as a bit of jokes and make joke pages. Those guys took those skills and became web designers in that kind of period. So always take the opportunities to take these side quests, these side projects to learn something new, because the likelihood is they can become main missions, right? AR and VR is a great example. We never had any AR or VR developers, so people went off and learned it and then just tried it, and then that became their job. So always think about, what are my side quests? What can I go on? Don't get stuck doing it. I put the Witcher image there because, you know, I'm a big Witcher fan and I feel like I lose hours doing side quests. So you've got to be a little bit smart about it, but try and do as many as you can to really kind of achieve that kind of goal. And then next thing. So before you go on any mission and do anything in the game, you've always got to assess what your in-game items are like, right? I'm going to fight a big boss. I'm learning this in Starfield. It's taking me ages to mine for my base. You've got to get that right. And it's no different when you're looking at your brand and your career. So you've got to assess your current in-game items. So what are your skills and achievements? So do you have the right skills and achievements on your CV and your kind of inventory to deliver against that job? Now, be brutally honest, right? Say, oh, I might be able to do Unity up to an intermediate level, but I need to get to a higher level to get there. So it's not just about the skills you've got, it's about the levels and how you can perform against them. Also, your achievements, right? You know, I mentioned side quests. They're your achievements. All the projects, all the things you get involved in, voluntary or paid for, they're really important. And they will give you that experience and that knowledge to get the XP to really drive that. But also, be completely honest and go, I don't have that skill set, and go out and get them. And there's loads of online places where you can learn skills. I mean, basic is YouTube, but there's loads of other kind of communities that you could jump in depending on your speciality. Gather feedback from your co-players. So, right, if you're in a job understand your one-to-ones and your reviews around your peers and your line manager and your capabilities really, really important. If you're not, talk to your students, talk to the students, talk to the teachers, and really kind of understand how we're doing. And if you're out of school, in your project groups, and I know some of you do a lot of kind of free passion projects, get feedback from those people. Take as much feedback as possible to try and improve you. This is how, I suppose, it's like grinding, right? You grind through the kind of levels, you get the experience, and you've got to go through and kind of build that up. But take that feedback from all those people and never stop, because it's how you really, really, really grow. Identifying redundant inventory items. Well, there's always kind of technologies that move on and we learn something really well. So we learn and move on from these things, but we may never use them again. So identify what is relevant for your career and actually what is relevant for your kind of CV and for you. Now, that doesn't mean that if you learned something 10 years ago, it won't be useful. You still got that experience and that knowledge that will drive you to make you better in the new product. But always be aware of what is relevant to the job you're kind of looking for. So in summary, with inventory check, just really, really think about what you've got going for yourself and be truly kind of honest with yourself around your skills and your achievements. And then make gains, put yourself on a career path or a skill tree that kind of really kind of gets you to that kind of level. Now, one thing I'm going to say is you don't need to have a perfect inventory check to apply for a job. A lot of companies will hire for potential, but you've got to demonstrate that you are learning and you are growing with those kind of things. So always kind of drive that kind of forward in your mind, that you don't have to wait to have the perfect inventory before you go. Sometimes it's how you work off the cuff. Just jump backwards there. Next slide. So choosing the right skill tree. I've just mentioned this for you, right? So there's a lot of disciplines within the gaming industry. So there's art, there's developing, there's game design, you name it. You probably go hear all about that these next couple of days. But what you've got to be really, really kind of careful about is understanding not just what your next step is in your skill tree, is what is that full skill tree to get you up that kind of ladder. So what are those skill upgrades for the current meta? So the current meta, right, always changes. If you play a Call of Duty or Fortnite, the biggest kind of first few weeks is all about learning the weapons meta and how the game meta works. It's no different for your skill tree, right? If you're a 2D artist, what is the kind of meta? What is the kind of technologies? What is the kind of trends? What is the fastest way and the best way you can do your kind of job? So you've got to understand your role and what's going on in your role. Now, you can do that through YouTube, look at influencers. There's loads of people out there that's getting there. And I know there's a number of resources online as well that can help you with that. Tutorials and side quests and workshops and courses and seminars, yes. Learn. There's always a new way or a better way or a system coming up, especially with AI at the moment. It's a bit of a worrying word for the people currently in the industry. And you probably go hear some talks on AI, but my advice to you guys is be the thought leaders of AI. Understand what you can do to use AI to really deliver, because that will set you apart in your interviews and your career progression, right? AI is not going away, so you've got to find the way of doing that. And there are loads of workshops, courses, and seminars. And if there isn't, you guys become and learn how to do it, right? Maybe you go use kind of DALL-E to create landscapes or backgrounds, and you could edit them and put a copy of it, draw over them and make that a piece. Maybe that way of working isn't in a studio at the moment, but you could lead with that and you could design through that. Practicing in the training ground, right? Come on, we've all done this. There's always the first level, which is the training level, and we always kind of drive that kind of forward. So you've got to have an area where you can practice your skills. So always keep at it. And an artist friend of mine who's a animator, she always draws, right? Whenever I'm in a meeting with her, she's drawing away. She's always honing her skills and learning those things. So she's always practicing. So always keep that sweet. So you've got to choose the right skill tree. Now, if you decide that due to the trends and something's happening, you want to change skill tree, that is completely fine. But remember, when you change a skill tree like you do in Witcher, sometimes you have to take a step back and learn those kind of skills and build them. And sometimes there's hybrid ones as well. So some skills can be transferable. but you've got to be aware around what is your skill tree. Right, so you've got your skill tree, you've got your inventory. How do you get yourself out there? Now, you've got to power up with networking. Networking is the biggest drive. And I know it's a pain in the arse sometimes because you don't want to just keep talking to these people. But my advice is you've got to join as many professional associations, like I call them guild and factions. It's exactly the same. You've got to join the guild and factions. Morrowind is coming to mind in my head. But you've got to join these. You've got to drive it kind of forward, and you've got to build this network and learn from them. That's how I do it. LinkedIn is a great place to do it, but there's lots of other individual industry kind of or specific department kind of networks. Teaming up with industry leaders. So I meet with a regular group of people every Friday afternoon and have a conversation. It's usually a cup of tea, natter over a number of recruiters in gaming industry. You guys can build your own communities and team up with these people and look at someone who is the industry leader, someone you want to aspire to. Now, it might not be perfect, it might not be exactly in your niche, but you've got to kind of build up and follow those trends and do something and build that up. So use LinkedIn, reach out, be brave, and go out and kind of introduce yourself and go to in-person and online events. You're here today, so you're one step there. You're doing really well. Unfortunately, as you play with any games, and especially online games, there's a lot of toxic players who really just want to kind of screw you over. So you've got to be really smart around who is going to be useful for you from a networking perspective and who is just going to bring you down because they're negative Nellies. So really think about that, but then actively find those positive alliances, really, and the ones that are going to really help you. And so once you've done your networking, keep in touch with them, keep them doing, follow their career and have that kind of thing. And even if you do it from a social aspect, it'll always really help. And I've always found that as a recruiter. I have people come to me that I've helped 10 years ago who still come and talk to me from a social aspect for advice. Be that person and be that person who can really help and take it forward. So a few glitches to avoid, because there's always glitches in games and they're quite funny, but stuff like that. So there's a number of in-game scans. So overcommitting to trends or certain paths is always going to be something you've got to be careful of, right? You've got to learn to adapt and change when something's dead, right? Everyone thought that kind of AR was going to take over the world. Now, with the exception of Pokemon Go, it's not really taken off. So a lot of people committed, and it's slowly catching up now. So just be careful of overcommitting. Also, what's really important is burnout, right? You've got to pause for your health and well-being. It's really important. It's quite easy to get lost in that kind of track and be really kind of stuck, and then you just feel burnt out. And then you go back to feeling like you're an NPC and you're doing the same old thing. You need to rest and reflect. And sometimes the best kind of ideas around how you want to develop your career or rebranding, or even ideas in your current role or in your project work, is when you take a break. So you need to look after yourself and be really kind of quite smart. Last one is solo mode, right? So it's great. Working in your career is a very individual, one-player kind of aspect, but you've got to really kind of be careful, not that you're stuck in that one-player mode. You've got to keep that kind of aspiration, those goals going forward, but you've got to kind of you can't do it on your own. So look at all the people, your peer feedback, look at all the people in your groups, and really kind of work together towards your goal. Going on WoW, World of Warcraft kind of raids are best when you do it with a group of people, right? So last kind of slide is around endgame. So always, once you reach the end of the level, reach to that milestone that you've got, always kind of reflect and remember where did I respawn and what have I done? And set yourself different respawn points or starts again and milestones in your brain journey. Don't think I'm just going to redo it now and then I'm just going to kind of drive it kind of and forward and then I'm done. It's got to be a continuous kind of journey, your brand. You've got to kind of take it forward. Second, daily challenges. So this is a big thing for me. Set yourself lots of little daily goals to do stuff, whether it's just reading an article on LinkedIn or creating a post or learning one new little thing a day. Spend 10 minutes, because Self-development is really important. And then that regular self-evaluation of, do I know how to do that little task? What does that do? That will really kind of drive you forward. And if you do that on a consistent basis, when you get to those big tasks and those challenges in your career and jobs, it'll be really easy. Celebrate level ups and achievement unlocks. Yeah, come on, you've got to celebrate the milestones, right? So when you get a job, you've got to go and celebrate. When you hit a project end goal and you delivered something, you've got to celebrate. You got to remember, work is hard work, so you've got to enjoy and celebrate the positive side of it as well. That's just as important. So I've just gone through kind of 20 questions, 20 points on this for 20 minutes. So really, thank you for your time. Go open it up for some Q&A. I think we've got 10 minutes or 8 minutes now. So has anyone got any questions? No worries. If not, you can always add me on LinkedIn and we can take it from there. But thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe. Fantastic presentation. We have a lot of questions. I have 3 years of experience building games in Unity, and I have noticed over the last few years that internship junior positions are extremely scarce, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people applying for the same jobs. I have had to branch out and explore other avenues to break into the industry, programming, QA, production, but I feel this is having a negative effect on my personal brand. Do you have any advice for that scenario?
Yeah, and this is it's a great question from Chris. And this is where you start to feel like you're in this kind of loop of NPC. It's difficult applying for jobs and progressing your career because you're always going to get a lot more kind of disappointment and rejection than you would do for being successful. And I think, Chris, the top tip is be persistent, be consistent, right? And you start to branch out. Sometimes you have to try new things to do that. But yeah, the market is tough at the moment. So you've got to really think, Chris, what is the one thing that makes you stand out? What is your USP, your unique kind of thing that makes you go, yes, you're the best person, and listen to the feedback and really kind of drive it up. The second point is internships, junior positions are extremely competitive. So you've got to think about what they're looking for and what have they done, and do a load of projects outside of work that will really drive it. You may have built something in Unity, like a game that you can use as a kind of portfolio. But yeah, there's lots to do. It's a very, it's a very in-depth topic and conversation. And I invite anyone who's in some place just to connect with me, because it's probably a longer conversation than the time we've got here. But you've got to reinvent, to summarize, you've got to reinvent yourself and be persistent to do it, and try and stay positive, because it's very, very challenging times. But Chris, reach out to me and we can have a long conversation.
Next question from Temo. Do you have advice for pivoting or rebranding inside the industry? For example, switching from mobile gaming to PC?
Yeah, I think it's just like when you switch consoles, Timo, right? You've got to get used to the new controls, the new layout, the new HUD and everything like that. You've got to understand the market of when you're going into PC or AAA gaming from mobile, right? It's completely different consumer base, different kind of ways of working. So I would connect with as many people as you can think in your industry in those environments. And then learn from them and get some advice from those guys. But you've got to adapt and kind of do that kind of research.
Next question from Roxana. I talked to a lot of companies lately, and I have been told that they only offer internships to students. However, when I asked them for a junior or entry-level position, they mentioned that they only hire for those roles if you have done an internship with them or if you have 1 or 2 years of experience. Recent graduates are not eligible for internships, but under experience for junior positions. Any advice on getting the first job after graduating?
Yeah. I like with the potential of not swearing, Roxana, I hate this in the market at the moment, and we'll deal with this a lot of time. But yeah, connect with me, we can talk more about it. But I think the advice I would give you is be really, really smart around your job searching. And I'm not sure where you're based, but it's very different in the locations. But having a strategy on hunting for jobs and how you find jobs, and keep track of doing that kind of piece and being persistent in that piece will help. My advice is keep going for junior to mid-level roles, and that will be your kind of soft spot. So you want to aim at those, but you have to be persistent with that job strategy and that approach. But we can really kind of drive that kind of forward. But I think you've got to have a strategy with when you're applying for jobs, and you've got to understand. I think when Chris mentioned there's a lot of people out in the market, so you are always competing with a large number of people. So think of your USP, think of what makes you stand out more, and think about how you're coming across as your brand. But that's a really, really frustrating situation, and something that I know the industry is slowly starting to change, but it's still out there at the moment. And I'll go to the next question because it's going to make me cross and I'll swear. That's how much I hate it.
Yeah. So, Kellen, I hope I pronounced it correctly. As a programmer, I have always emphasized utility skills on my applications, such as source control, Git, Perforce, etc., knowledge of Agile, etc. Is there any generic utility skills that someone looking for their next position in the games industry should look to maintain?
Yeah, I think all the kind of core skills you mentioned are important. I think my advice is always think around how you communicate the softer skills, because in my experience of interviewing, we do a lot of technical assessment. So and everyone is good on the technical assessments on different things. So what you've got to do is really demonstrate those other skills, and sometimes they're not on the job descriptions. Sometimes you've got to read between the lines. But for example, if you're managing a squad, you've got to have a lot of management skill and communication skills, right? And what you can drive kind of forward. So I would really look, like I said about that skill tree and your inventory check, look at what are those real skills you want to be, and not just the skills to do that role, but what's the next role in your kind of skill tree. So I think there's a number of ones there. But yeah, you've got to be kind of smart and read between the lines of the role.
When I've worked with a team, the amount I've learned has been better than alone. How can you practice and keep growing when the gaming industry is hiring basically only seniors? Game jams are amazing, but you can't do that all the time. What else do you recommend doing, and how to improve networking when you're non-European, non-US? I'm from Latin America.
Well, Latin America's got one of the biggest growths for the gaming industry for professionals. So I'm sure there's going to be some groups and communities out there. If not, be one of the first people to kind of set the one up. And sometimes my best advice is build those communities and then start small projects in those communities, right? So it might be trying to solve a problem in your industry, or it might be kind of building a game, it might be doing something completely new. That is one way. The other way is a lot of companies have incubator programs. So they'll take you or a group of people with an idea for a new game, and they'll help and coach you and even pay you in some instances to build this kind of new game. Just doing that will give you the experience and the knowledge to kind of make you kind of a better person. But you've got to look out for those communities. Latin America, Mexico in particular, and Brazil are really, really growth areas for gaming industry. There's a lot of professionals coming through, so I'm sure there's that. And if there isn't, be that first person and build a community. That could be your USP.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you, everyone. There's a lot of questions. So, Joe, as agreed, I hope you can spare some time and stay here to answer those.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.